It looks good. I had a purple shirt once.
Yeah.
It was the end of my story. I didn't really,
Okay.
I didn't really have anything else. Anything else there?
Oh, it's kind of disappointing.
Hello and welcome to Flanagan's Wake, a Doof Media podcast touching Mike Flanagan just to see how it feels. My name is Scott Daly, and joining me, as always, it's Mr. Smiley himself, Matt Freeman. How's it going today, Matt?
I'm a plank of wood on the ceiling.
Oh, the worst thing possible right now is that people not watching the video can't see what you're doing. Stop it. Why you held it for so much longer than I thought you were going to?
It was way creepier than I thought it would be. In my head. Well, you're welcome.
This week on the show, we continue our journey through Mike Flanagan's 10-part series adapting The Haunting of Hill House. This week, episode 3, Touch. The spotlight shifts to Theo, who we learn does have extrasensory perception, but in a twist, it's primarily activated through touch, which, Matt, I believe you accurately predicted last week, so we'll just give you a quick pat on the back. Good job, Matt.
Thank you.
Good job. All right, Matt, what did you think of episode 3, Touch?
Loved it. I love how this show is structured, and I love this episode as an example of that. The character that we're following is just a particularly interesting character. I feel like Theo, narratively speaking, is sort of a hinge of the story where she has a privileged amount of information that a lot of these other characters don't have because she has this level of supernatural knowledge that they don't. She's got the touch. She and I think we'll get into this later and talk about kind of the how and why of some of these things. But, she seems to have, I think she probably has a better idea of what's going on than anyone. Not to say that she, has the full picture, certainly, but it was very interesting to get to know her. I think part of it is that she's a character you're really curious about from earlier. Anyway, love this episode. Love the structure of it. Love the show. Can't wait to talk about it.
Yeah. I don't remember if I said this last week. If so, apologies for repeating myself, but I'm in this situation now where every episode, the character of that episode is my new favorite character on the show, where I'm just like, man, Steve, I love Steve. He's the best. And then we did the Shirley episode and was like, nope, Shirley's my new best friend. Steve is dead to me. And now here we are with Theo. And immediately I'm like, I love Theo. Yeah. She's phenomenal. And just everything about her works. The kind of the thing we're setting up. I mean, the cool thing we get to do in this episode, I think now, is with 3 episodes in, we have started to establish a pattern in these characters that we can start to note things that the show is doing that is similar across all 3 of the characters, and also the ways in which the characters diverge from each other in interesting ways. And that maybe helps us start to get a shape of what the show is ultimately doing, which is really fun. It's a really fun place to be in. And I think it's perfect that you can kind of tell now that we're going through the Crane siblings in age order, right? We started with the eldest and we're working our way down to the youngest, and Theo is the middle child of the 5 children family, and her being in the middle is really interesting thematically as well. I think you said that the hinge, I think that's perfect. She is the hinge because she's right in between both sides of this whole thing.
And there's an implied sort of countdown there where as soon as you realize that the youngest child is Nellie, which is the one that you are primed to be the most curious about.
Yep. It's great. I'm loving it. I'm having so much fun. Like, I'm having so much fun watching the show. I'm watching it multiple times, way more times than I probably need to prepare for the podcast, just because I want to. And then I'm like eagerly awaiting these recording sessions. I mean, I always have fun sitting with you and talking, but it feels different right now. It feels like very high energy. I'm really vibing with the show. And I knew I would, right? Because I've seen it before, but I've never really thought about it to the level we're thinking about it right now. And I was just, it's continually delighting me how much there is to dive into and pick at.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I guess that's one very high level comment to make about the you said high energy just now. So the show is both like very cerebral and there's so much to chew on, which is, that's what we like because it gives us so much to talk about. But at the same time, it's extremely propulsive. These episodes just fly by for me. I somehow, you sit down and you watch the whole episode and you're just riveted the entire time.
Yeah.
And that's pretty remarkable, actually.
I agree. All right, we will get into the actual episode now. The intro section of the podcast is over. That's how we do transitions here at Doof Media. We just announce them as transitions. Right. And speaking of announcements, here comes the announcement section of the show.
Is it starting?
It's beginning now.
Okay,
right
good.
Now.
Yep.
So we did just want to say we have, for those of you that have been following us for a long time, we have some partners in the podcasting world that have been part of the Doof Media community for a while. They were taking a break from podcasting the last couple of years, but they are back this week with their brand new podcast. They're calling Belting at Windmills. It is a close read analysis and discussion podcast about the Expanse book series. I believe that's 9 books long. It's a series that you and I read the first book for our book club ages ago, and then I think we did the first season of the television show for Doofcast ages ago as well. But I hadn't really read any of it past that part. And Elliot and Ruben doing this podcast is encouraging me to pick up the books again and read it. So I'm pretty excited about that. I think if you like kind of our close read analysis that you saw in the books we've covered so far on Flanagan's Wake, if you followed us on Kingslingers and like that style of analysis, I think Elliot and Ruben are a pretty good match to what we do. So just encouraging you to go ahead and check out Belting at Windmills. You can find it anywhere podcasts can be found, or you can just go to doofmedia.com and you'll see it there as well. I think by the time this recording is released, just the first episode will be out. They're doing it every 2 weeks instead of every week. Or sorry, they're Australian, so they say the word fortnight in like just normal conversation, like it's just a normal word to say. They just use it like normal.
We should start doing that though.
Yeah. Can we also do Arvo? Do you know that's a word that they use?
I don't know what that means, but sure.
I think it just means noon.
Oh, okay.
But that's what they say in Australia.
That's great.
Yeah. So anyway, check out Belting at Windmills. They're reading Leviathan Wakes right now, and they're just the first 5 chapters of that book, so plenty of time to catch up and join in on them. Please check them out.
Which is a great book, by the way. If you're on the fence about The Expanse, I think we both really enjoyed that book.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's fun science fiction that takes itself seriously from the science part of the science fiction. Like it is, they try to do as much as possible to make the science of the book as accurate and real as possible. But yeah, from a character perspective, from all the things we love about stories, the book does a really great job. So can't say anything about the rest of the books in the series because I haven't read them. But yeah, Leviathan Wakes, good book and good podcast. Belting at Windmills. Check them out now.
Yep.
All right, Matt, let's do it. Let's get into episode 3, Touch. As we said, this was the Theo episode. This episode, by the way, was written by Liz Thang. And directed by Mike Flanagan, of course. So this is the first episode, Matt, that we've covered so far that has not been officially credited to Mike Flanagan as a writer. Obviously, he's the showrunner, so he's involved in the story decisions at all ends. But this episode was penned by a different writer. Was that noticeable to you? It wasn't really noticeable to me. I think Liz did. I use her first name as if we're friends. I think she did a very good job writing this episode. We both really enjoyed it, and I think it meshes into the tone and the style and the feel of Mike Flanagan. I think
I very much agree. In fact, that detail just escaped me until you're telling me this now. So I am surprised to hear that. I'll put it that way. I felt like it was very much in line with Flanagan's whole approach and to storytelling and character and everything. Thought it was a fantastic episode.
Yeah.
Just extremely. I mean, probably my favorite episode so far. I think. I mean, not that I think I've thought all of them were great. It's just this one jumped out to me. There were some things in it that jumped out to me just for being really great in a way that felt really unique. So I'll just say what I'm thinking of.
Go, please.
Yeah. So the scene that I was simultaneously just profoundly enjoying and also sort of aware that I had no idea how they were pulling it off, is the fact that we have an extended sequence that's just Theo walking slowly around a basement, touching things in a long one shot. And that's basically it. I mean, it's absolutely riveting. Like you're glued to it. You're hanging on every little micro expression as she touches things, and you see her expression darken slightly, but at the same time, that's not quite the thing that she's looking for. Even just like the slowness and intentionality of her taking off her gloves, and the build up, that whole sequence from her going into the house to leaving it, is one of my favorite few minutes of the show so far.
I was about to ask you which scene of Theo wandering around a basement touching things, because there are two in this episode, right? And that is, I think, one of the things that the show does so well because one of you and I talked a lot about this episode before this recording, I think, because we were just so like jazzed and excited about it. We just felt the need to talk about it immediately. We don't always do that, but we did this week. And one of the things we were talking about is like, you were like, how does he do it? How does he make a scene like that feel so tense when like nothing's happening actually? And I think part of the way he does it is by doing this kind of mirrored scene construction, where we did have the scene where young Theo was wandering through the basement of Hill House touching things, and we know there's like a creepy basement monster ghost down there, right? Like Luke saw it. It doesn't make an appearance in that scene, but we know it's there, and there's a lot of ingrained tension in that scene and sequence. And I also think I think the sound in both of the sequences is doing a lot of work there for us. Like you mentioned the Theo taking off her gloves. I think that like that it feels like the sound effects are mixed high in both of those sequences, to the point where like it is very tactile feeling and sounding when she takes off her gloves and when she's touching things, and you like hear her hand run along something as she moves by it. I just feel like that's mixed higher than it normally would be. And Flanagan also does this thing. So there's one thing he does which I really, really love, which is there's no like big smash cut or loud clanging sound effect when Theo touches something and gets something, right? Like there's no real loud draw your attention to it visual feedback. There's no cut to an image that she's seeing, with one exception that we'll talk about. But for the most part, we are just left to wonder what she's seeing, and we get no real cue that something weird is happening. Except that's not entirely true, because Flanagan does mix in this very quiet kind of just like, I don't even like, it's a tone. It's just a tone that's like underneath everything whenever she's touching something. And the entire time that she's in the basement in Hill House wandering around there, that tone is playing the entire time. And it's not playing the entire time when she's in the basement of the house as a grown-up. But it does once she sits down on the couch is when the tone starts, and then the soundtrack comes back in, and everything starts to elevate there. But man, it's like you're absolutely right. This is a great place to start. I love this scene.
Yeah, I mean, in a sense, it's the parallel construction point where the two stories match the most closely, because in both of them you have Theodora, essentially going against what other people would prefer that she do by going down into a basement on her own. And then in both cases, you actually expect that she's going to find a ghost, or you think she may find a ghost, or you're afraid she'll find a ghost. But in both cases, she doesn't find a ghost. Instead, she finds a secret. In Hill House, it's the bootlegging pantry, I suppose it is.
Yep.
In the other house, in the modern timeline, it's the horrible secret that the daughter of the family that's fostering her is being molested.
Yeah.
And I think there's all kinds of beautiful kind of, short story symmetry that we can drag out of this. The idea that these horrible secrets, we don't know much about the bootlegging yet, but I think we can surmise like these horrible secrets may be in some ways worse than if it were just a ghost a ghost is almost a whimsical compared to the horror of the actual things that Theo has had to confront in her life. Probably, I mean, it's a bit of a trope, the psychic who is just burdened by their psychic power, but I feel like this episode took that trope and like embraced it and made it fresh. I think a ton of that, by the way, is Kate Siegel's embodiment of this character and just making it feel, like I said a minute ago, like when she touches things, like you said, you don't see what she's seeing. There's not the smash cut. It's all just the subtle micro expressions, and it's all her, right? She carries it, and you can easily imagine those scenes just not working.
Yeah.
If it wasn't Kate Siegel.
Yeah. No, she's phenomenal. And this is one of those things that I think is a really hard character to play because, as we're going through these Crane children, we're very quickly identifying like a core theme to each of them, right? With Shirley last week, it was the concept of fixing someone and like putting this kind of perfect story or face over tragedy and making it okay. And with Theo, it is the concept of walls. It is building walls around her to protect her and make herself safe from the outside world. And so Kate Siegel has to play this character that is very reserved, that has built up these walls so high and so thick that nobody can ever touch her. And yet she feels everything that people feel every time she touches them, right? And so she has to play both sides of that reality almost simultaneously. Mm-hmm. And she does such a fantastic job at it. Like, she is tough, she is abrasive, she is argumentative. Like that is a trait of Theo, like that we see in the young version of Theo as well, that she's not gonna take shit from people, and she's just gonna call them out. Like, I love when we see young Theo confront Mrs. Dudley for grabbing onto Luke so hard. Like, she's just not this is a grown-up, and she's just not afraid to confront them and be like, hey, stop it. Stop doing that. Yeah. And that is a trait that she carries forward into her adulthood. But yeah, like, I just love like how she performs this character, all of it, like to the point where when you finally get to the moment near the end of the episode where she touches Nell and is almost like thrown backwards with the force of it and collapse on the floor in tears, like, you just totally buy it. And you buy it as like, oh, this is like a big deal for Theo to allow herself to feel this in this way.
Yeah. Well, and part of that is that she's been very contained. That's one of the things that seems like a very thin gap to shoot with their performance, is just like, both you have to pick up so much context from the performance, but also Theo is just this very, very contained, like you said, walled off character, where she's walled herself off from the world. She's sort of, walled herself off from herself in many ways. She's definitely struggled. I think that's probably, to me, the most fun and shocking reveal of the episode, is that Theo is a successful child psychologist. Because I think it's intentional that prior to like that moment where you see her doing therapy on the child, you're like, wait a minute, Theo is a shiftless fuck up. What is she doing? Like, she lives in her sister's backyard and she doesn't have her life together. What's going? And then you realize, like, okay, well, we're missing something, because she is living in her sister's backyard, and that situation doesn't seem like the best. That seems like it's its own thing off to the side. Like, maybe her life isn't going well in certain ways, but she has this mission where she is using her psychic power to be a psychic superhero savior of children.
Yeah.
And that is very, like, she's got that nailed down. She's got a nice office. She's got tons of clients. She's got tons of business. Well, I don't know if she's got tons of clients. It could just be that she contracts with the state. But in any case, she's got plenty of work.
Yeah. She's a successful child psychologist. Like, I think that is absolutely true.
Yeah.
And yeah, like, I love that. I love that, like, you had this opinion of her going in, because this is something that is very Shirley Jackson's Hill House to me, because remember, like, we had that long conversation about when each of these characters, we quote unquote meet them by this introductory paragraph for each of them that Shirley Jackson gives us that defines who they are as people. And one of how Shirley Jackson defined Theodora in the book was exactly that kind of way, like this very like shiftless, like bohemian woman who like doesn't follow rules and order and just kind of does whatever she wants and floats around. And the Theo we eventually meet, I think, is much more deep and more complicated and interesting than that. And I think that is ultimately a thing that Flanagan is either intentionally or not channeling here in the show, is the way he withholds information about certain characters until a certain point is really, really interesting. Because like we've watched 2 hours of the show before we turn on this episode, and we had no idea who Theo was and what she does. Furthermore, like, what does Nell do? Right? We just learned she was married last episode, and we get a little more information on that this episode. But like, what does she do? What does Luke do? I mean, Luke's an addict, so we know a little bit more about him, but that's obviously not all Luke is an addict. The way the show has like very, very carefully omitted key details of all these people in order to hold them for a certain point and reveal and perception switch is very self-evident here after 3 episodes. Because it is a kind of a shocking, I did not know about Theo. How did that not come up in what we've seen of Theo? It hadn't.
We talked a lot about protagonist goggles in the book, which is, I guess, our word for, when your perception of the character is distorted by the fact that they are the point of view, which is really, and that's, so the TV show may be doing the best single use of protagonist goggles I've ever seen in television, right? Because you don't literally have the thoughts of the character running through your head. But so the one specific scene I'm thinking of is when they bring Nell's body to the funeral home and they back up, the hearse, and whoever it is pulling the body out of the back of the hearse. And Shirley and Theo are both standing there with Shirley's husband. And when we saw that scene from Shirley's perspective, I'm putting that in quotes because it's from the camera's perspective. How is it from Shirley's perspective? But the point is, we were identified with Shirley in that scene. We've been following Shirley. And when Theo says, like, I can't do this, and she walks away, I didn't say this last episode, but I had this thought and this like feeling, not even a thought, more a feeling of just like, Theo's not strong enough to handle this, but Shirley's strong enough to handle this. And I was feeling very sympathetic to Shirley, and I was almost like, no surprise, flighty Theo is going to walk away. And then watching it from Theo's perspective this week, I was like, who could stand there and watch their sibling's dead body be wheeled out of it? Like, that's a horrible thing to have to experience. There's no way I could stand there for that. I wouldn't have even come out in the first place. Shirley is the one who's weird. It's not weakness to walk away from that. It's just like, of course. So I just thought that was really interesting. And in fact, I'd go even further and expand this a bit and say, like, we didn't say many like actually critical things of Shirley last episode. I think we were pretty like even-handed, bordering on highly sympathetic to Shirley. This week, with the benefit of a little bit of distance, and also with the perspective being shifted to being from Theo's perspective, I'm actually just like feeling a lot more critical of Shirley. Like, I'm reflecting on how, we briefly talked about how Shirley wouldn't get her son the Halloween mask, and I thought that was kind of messed up. And now I'm just like, like that, like Shirley is so avoidant and is too fixated on her own stuff to emotionally identify or even recognize other people's needs. This is such a Shirley thing, and I'm like, I'm only able to have this thought because we have some distance from Shirley, and now we're in Theo's head, and I'm almost wondering, like, what am I going to feel about Theo next week? When we have, like, it's just really a fascinating whiplash, which is, again, the same, like you were just saying, the same thing that the book did to us.
And I think the other cool thing about it is, I think that's absolutely true. We can see Shirley from an outside perspective now, but we also still retain the knowledge of what it is like to be Shirley and everything Shirley went through as a child. So we still like also kind of understand, like, again, objectively, the things that Shirley is doing in these episodes is insane. Like, why? Stop it, Shirley. Stop embalming your sister's corpse. Let someone else do that. But we totally understand why she would be absolutely driven to do that. And so it is this really cool thing. I think my favorite instance of what you're talking about here is the reveal in this episode that the speech that Shirley gave to her children, that we were very complimentary to her about last week, which, did I set you up for that? Yes, I did. Apologies. But that speech and that conversation was just basically word for word taken from Theo, who is coaching her through how to talk to your kids about this. And I want to be careful here, because I don't want to say that in like a derogatory manner, like that's fucked up, Shirley. That's not what I'm saying. Like, Theo is a child psychologist. Like, if anyone is a good person to get advice on how to talk to a child about the death of their aunt, like, it's Theo. Like, she gives her all the good advice and says all the correct things. It is intentional that the way Flanagan structured these episodes is we see that conversation first, thinking all this is coming from Shirley, thinking that this is Shirley's accurate reflection on how she feels about death and how she processes death and how she's communicating to her children the correct way of dealing with death and to talk about it and to work through it and to answer questions and to be vulnerable. And we're like, oh, wow. And I think if you go back and listen to that episode, there was a part of both of us, and mine was a little bit played up for obvious reasons now, but there was a part of both of us that was kind of bouncing off of that depiction of death from Shirley, because we were like, I don't know if this matches the way we've seen Shirley handle death in the rest of the episode. I don't know if it's in line with that. And now we kind of see even more why. And they structured the show on purpose to do this way, right? Like, we see Shirley give the conversation first, and then it is only later, from someone else's perspective, that we see where those words actually came from. Yeah. And that is all intentional. We didn't have to do it that way, but we did, and it allows us to start to think about those kind of things.
Yeah. Well, it specifically allows us to think like, oh, so Shirley appeared to have her stuff together, but actually when it comes down to it, despite the fact that she's literally an undertaker, she has absolutely no mental toolbox for dealing with death. None other than like, oh, I embalm them and then I fix them.
Yeah.
Which is seems like a fragile solution.
Yeah. It also, the other thing I want to highlight on in that scene is Kate Siegel's performance again, and how she communicates the correct words to say to a child. Because, okay, let's set the stage here. She has just learned her sister is dead, right? So she is not like doing well, but the way Kate says the lines is just kind of so flat and like whatever. It's like she's reading, like, this is what the book says to do, so this is what you do, but like, she doesn't feel it. Shirley doesn't feel it. Nobody feels the things that we're saying here. And I mean, that's just textual, right? Because Theo finishes the conversation saying, I'm glad I don't have to do it, because then I'd say how I really feel, which is I'm fucking pissed off that she did this to us. And she, like, in this family, we should know more than anyone how destructive this can be to a family. How fucking dare she? And it's just like, again, the way in which we see through Kate Siegel's performance, like how the characters feel about these kind of things, I think is very, very interesting. Because again, we complimented those words, right? We said, this is the good way of helping a child understand and deal with the death of a loved one. And yet no one really buys them. I think, the thing you said about like, Shirley is a mortician that can't deal with death. And I think Theo is a child psychologist that can't deal with childhood trauma, right? Like the whole opening scene at the beginning where she's talking to the little girl who has built up her own giant walls around her to keep her safe, so much so that when Theo touches her, she can't read anything from her because she's built these walls around her so much. And like, Theo, that is Theo, right? Like the goal of this thing should be like to help a person realize that, hey, you don't have to build up these walls around you. Like, you it's okay to let people in. It's okay. Like, and of course, this girl is going through a horrible, horrible thing, molestation. Like, I don't want to minimize that, but Theo doesn't know about that at that point, right? So just this idea that like she's saying to this girl, no, you do this, it's good. You know, you and I, we're both really great builders. We make ourselves really safe and no one ever gets in. It's like, that's bad, actually. Yeah. That's bad.
Right. It's interesting because I definitely don't want to sound like I'm coming down hard on Theo for this, because like I just called her a superhero. But the thing is, she's supposed to be being a child psychologist, not being a superhero, you know? So yeah. The subtext of the phone call that she has with whoever it is she's on the phone with is like, this is her 20th child molester that she's put away.
Yeah. That she does this a lot. Yeah.
Which is fantastic and heroic in the sense that it gets these horrible people out of a context where they can abuse children. But like you just said, it's not really her dealing with the aftermath of trauma. It's her preventing future trauma, which again is fantastic. But it's not actually her dealing with trauma, which is the thing that she needs to do.
Yeah.
In the same way that Shirley needs to deal with and like accept the reality of death and that you can't fix it.
Yeah.
They're both covering up their actual issue.
Yeah.
I'm going to use that as a bridge to talk about something, unless you were going to say something.
No, go for it. My thing can come up later. Go for it.
So just another like great moment in the episode that I wanted to hit upon is her and her mom having this, you know, heart to heart.
Yeah.
And I think I focus on it somewhat because the character of the mom is a character that we don't see a lot of, but she's super important to how all these things are playing out, and we want to understand what's going on with her. Mm-hmm. So we learn that, you know, she has some self-awareness of the fact that she has a little bit of the touch, and that her mom had a little bit of the touch, and she probably doesn't fathom how strong Theo is, or you know, maybe doesn't get that all of her kids seem to have it to some degree, I would say, except maybe like Steve, because Steve doesn't see any ghosts.
I think it's really interesting that like she kind of runs through and assumes it's just the women, right? She says, you know, Theo, you have what you have. Shirley has like her sleep talking, which like, you know, the one instance we've seen of Shirley as an adult is sitting up and saying Nellie's in the red room as if she gained information about something. We learned that Nell described Hill House as being loud, which is an interesting word. And then we also do get a little bit in this episode, speaking of like the men of the Crane family. Luke, there is that when they go into the sick room to look at the other end of the phone, the two-way phone thing, Luke says it smells bad in here, and we specifically have Theo say like it doesn't smell any worse than anywhere else. Like, so it almost as if Luke is picking up on something that Theo is not picking up on. But the exception here is Steve, who maybe just doesn't get nothing.
Yeah. And also Luke sees the little girl and he sees the basement ghost. So
true.
Don't necessarily call that the ESP side of things, but like, okay, Steve distinctly didn't have any supernatural experiences that he remembered, although now he has seen a ghost in the present day. So anyway, setting all that aside, the conversation that she has with her mom, I think, is really, really interesting. And it's I don't even quite exactly know what I'm going to say about it when I start talking here. But basically, you know, the mom gives her these gloves as a gift, which is a totally well-meaning and compassionate and furthermore practical solution to the immediate problem, which is, hey, sometimes you touch things and it freaks you out because it shows you something horrible that you didn't expect to see. But it's also like clearly a temporary solution. It's a Band-Aid. It covers the problem, but it doesn't solve the problem, doesn't really help her deal with it, just allows her to hide it. Yeah. It's just another wall, and it just reinforces this character pattern of hers, which is hide everything about herself, ultimately including the fact that she's gay, which she hides from her siblings until she's in her late 30s, I guess.
30s,
yeah. So it's weird. I feel like I keep talking out of both sides of my mouth, because I'm not saying that her mom, you know, made a terrible parenting mistake. It probably would have been different if she hadn't died soon after this.
Yeah.
But it ends up being negative, even though it was meant to be positive, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think Liv would probably look at her daughter however many years later and see that she's still constantly wearing gloves and be a little saddened by that.
Mhm.
I do like, this is completely not like spoken in the text of the scene, but I do think the gloves were meant to be a stopgap solution while she was learning to figure this thing out and deal with this. And yeah, the most heartbreaking part of that scene to me is that thing like where Liv says to her daughter, you know, in the meantime, as you figure this out, I'll talk to you more about this when you're older. But in the meantime, if you ever get overwhelmed or have questions or anything, you can come talk to me. And we know for a fact that that doesn't happen, right? She dies. And so then Theo has to live the rest of her life with no one to talk to about this. Because I don't know about you, it doesn't say this specifically in the show, but I don't think Theo talks about her gift with any of her siblings.
No,
Like,
I think they would think she was crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, she. The subtext I pick up is that none of these people have shared a single shred of their supernatural experiences from Hill House, with the exception of Steve, who didn't see anything.
yeah, that's the irony of it. Yeah, that Steve writes the most about it and saw nothing. Yeah. And that is, I think, a great place where Theo is again kind of, as you said, the hinge, and also put in the middle as the middle child and the middle person of this family. She draws the comparison for us very clearly here in that wonderful scene where Steve has now reconsidered the Hill House book, and by reconsidered I mean he's just going to offer to buy off his family so they won't be mad about it anymore.
Mhm.
Which is like, there is this real trend that we're seeing with Steve. Like, Shirley accuses him of this directly, of it's always about the money with you. But there is an absolute trend with Steve that like the thing he is most concerned with is his financial security, is money. Another great way I think Flanagan gets that into this episode is when we cut back to Nell's wedding. There's this brief scene while Nell, like with the cameras kind of circling around Nell while she's looking for her bridesmaid. We hear in the background Steve is talking to his wife Lee, and he's talking to her about how he didn't get a dowry from her from their wedding. That like he didn't, and Lee's response to that is like, I supported you for 6 years and you're not happy because you didn't get a cow. And like they're both a little drunk, and he's joking, but like it does kind of show how just the money is like always a thing on Steve's mind. And also I think we're primed to pay attention to stuff like that because we know that in the years since that moment, I think it's 2 years. It's only 2 years. Steve's marriage has collapsed. They're not living together anymore.
Mhm.
And so we're like primed for looking at, hey, what maybe is the moments that caused their marriage to collapse. Is like, well, Steve was supported financially by his wife for 6 years, and he's like weird about money. And I'm sure that was probably like a point of conflict in their marriage.
Yeah, that's really interesting. This definitely a preoccupation of his. Isn't there another moment in this episode where money is mentioned and the context is, I forget, gosh, okay. Normally I'm better about remembering things than this, but it's somebody's talking about like, yeah, all we need to do is fix this house up and then we're going to sell it for a lot of money and then we're going to get our forever house.
Yeah, that was last episode, but yeah.
Okay. Well, anyway, the point being, money in this case is viewed as like the solution to the problem of we keep moving from house to house. The reason we're in Hill House in the first place is because we don't have enough money.
Mm-hmm.
If we had, by implication, if we had enough money, we would have already been in the forever house and not needed to go to Hill House and not expose ourselves to this.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, back to that scene. The reason for bringing it up was Theo as this hinge, as you said. I love that you said that because it's perfect. But as this stuck in the middle, right? You have on the one side, you have her older two siblings who have both entirely convinced themselves that nothing out of the ordinary happened in Hill House. There was nothing supernatural. Everything that happened there was a result of, in Steve's mind, his mom going crazy, and Shirley's just put a happy face on it, and there was nothing wrong with her mother, and nothing happened. She's just dead for random reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the other half, the two younger siblings, we know have both specifically been haunted by ghosts, right? Like Nell is seeing this bent neck lady, and Luke is seeing both. I think Abigail is the name of the ghost that he constantly sees and no one believes him about, and then also sees a ghost in the basement, a creepy basement ghost. Which, by the way, you can buy the Funko Pop of creepy basement ghost if you want to. Get creepy basement ghost in your house today.
I need one right here.
So yeah, you have on one side two characters that are definitely experiencing supernatural things. You have on one side two characters that are absolutely vehemently denying that such a things exist. And then in the middle, you have Theo, who is herself supernatural. But the wrinkle in this, I think, is really great. But also, as a child psychologist, knows that sometimes kids create monsters in order to process things they can't fully understand, as happens in this episode, right? Mr. Smiley is not some supernatural being that's haunting the house. Mr. Smiley is just a little girl's way of trying to compartmentalize and understand and make it through the horrible thing that's happening to her. And so Theo is right in the middle of all of her siblings in that way. That she knows supernatural stuff exists, but also she knows sometimes things have rational explanations for them.
So one way of reframing what I said a minute ago is like, you know, she it's not that she has, or maybe I didn't say this with my mouth and I said it with my head. The point being, she's touched both Nellie and Luke at different times. Presumably she has seen, or she definitely touched Luke, like right after he saw the basement ghost. So presumably she no, I don't think presumably, like she definitely knows that Luke believes that he saw a ghost in the basement.
Yes.
She probably knows that Nellie believes that she's seen whatever she's seen.
Yep.
Etc. So the question is then, or what you just said, just because they believe they've seen it doesn't mean it actually was there. It could be a manifestation of some, you know, just as simple as, well, Luke was scared alone in the dark in a dumbwaiter in a basement that isn't supposed to exist, screaming his head off, and he looked in the dark and he saw something, and his imagination might have been so powerful in that moment that it turned it into a ghost. That's something that you could actually see Theo thinking to explain away those memories. So
and I love her. So she is kind of, because again we're like, so we've got two more episodes. If we're following our current trend of one episode per Crane child, we have two more episodes with two Crane children, and the two episodes with two Crane children are the ones that we know factually, because we know more than the characters know, had ghosts fucking with them. We know this. We know that, like, there's no, I think this is an important thing to say here. There's no indication in the show so far that, like, the ghosts that Luke is seeing are not real, right? There's nothing that the show has communicated in that. Now, it's not to say it's not possible, but the language of the show seems to insist that those things are really there. They're really happening. I mean, Luke gets a shirt ripped, right? I'm sure that could have been him getting caught on something, but it was in the middle of the floor of the basement, so it just wasn't. And then same thing for Nellie. Like, there's no indication that any of the stuff that Nellie has been experiencing or seeing is not real. And so we are about to transition to this point where we're going to move to characters who are fully being haunted by ghosts, and that is a transition point in the episode, right? Like, Steve saw the one ghost, his sister, at the very end of the episode. Shirley in her episode saw her mother at the end of the episode. We're still not exactly clear on, was that literally the ghost of Olivia Crane in her morgue telling her, hey, how you doing? Look at this box. Or was that just Shirley's mind fucking with her? And then this episode with Theo, we're right in the middle. Again, we're right in the middle of that. We see ghosts, we experience ghosts in this episode, and also we experience a rational explanation for a monster. And so it's just like, structurally, this is really great because it's prepped us to, now we're moving from one extreme. Now we're going to move to the other extreme.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that this is somehow honors everything about the book perfectly while remapping all of it, right? Because it's like you've got the element of no one who reads that book comes away from it entirely sure whether there were any ghosts or not, and also no one's entirely sure whether Theo and or Nellie were actually had magic powers. And that's kind of where we are, with the exception that Theo definitely has magic powers. But we don't really know for sure whether the ghosts are real, right? Or it could literally be the same thing as like our theory at the end of reading the book, where it's not ghosts, it's one or more of the children just sort of manifesting their fears, or they're externalizing their traumas, something like that. I'm not leaning that direction right now, to be honest. I'm thinking the show is going to be a little bit more definitive about these questions. I would be somewhat surprised if the end of the show is just like, nope, there never actually were any ghosts.
Yeah.
But all that being said, I think it does keep, at least the characters themselves are kind of in the place where the reader of Haunting of Hill House is.
Yeah, it allows you to live in that ambiguity for at least a time. Maybe not the whole run of the show, but for at least a time. Yeah, I think that's great. I also love the way it's channeling moments from the book in different ways. Like the opening of this episode, we haven't talked about it yet, but the opening of this episode is Theo thinking she's holding Nell's hand in the night, and then it turns out that she was not holding Nell's hand. And that is just literally out of the book. It's reversed a little bit, right? It's Eleanor who is the one who says, whose hand was I holding? Not Theo. But so they twisted it around because this is a Theo episode, and also just because the idea of the hand holding working with the touch of the episode. Like that's one of those unlocks that like you have to assume as a writer, you're just like having a really good day after you break that part of the story where you're like, maybe just like kind of whiteboarding the structure of the series, and you're like, we really want to work in the scene where Eleanor and Theo think they're holding hands and they're not, because it's such a powerful moment in the book. How do we work this in? And then you suddenly go, oh, maybe we could do something with Theo. Oh wait, maybe Theo's psychic power is through touch. And then you're just like thinking you're hot shit for the rest of the day at work. Like, I am good at this. I am good at this writing thing. Cause it is just enormously clever as a way of bringing in Theo's psychic ability while also staying true to this moment in this scene in the book, and making it all about the way the camera like holds on the hand holding. I think is really great. It's really great.
Yeah, I'm glad you reminded me of that, because I almost forgot that she had her own like distinctly supernatural ghost experience. Not just like, oh, I touched something and it gave me a bad feeling, but like there was something in her bed. I love how creepy that scene is.
Shot so well.
And it doesn't
shot so well.
I love how it's shot. I love it doesn't culminate in like a big scare, right? You're kind of expecting it to be like the first episode when a similar thing happens to her dad and he rolls over and there's I guess like, it's a nightmare. So it's nothing actually happens. But the point being, you expect it to be explosive and it's actually just super creepy.
Yeah. You're waiting for the jump scare moment and it doesn't come there. I mean, like, and it's not that the show is like anti-jump scare. Like there's the moment in the episode where Theo wakes up, her blanket's being pulled off her, which is like just from Ouija, like perfectly is like a recreation of that scene where the girl has the blanket slowly pulled off of her. And then she finds, standing at the end of her bed, she finds Mr. Smiley, who reminded me a lot of the Canker Man, by the way. In both design and also just conception, that it's a child trying to understand something that they can't and creating a monster to be the face of that thing. That is a jump scare moment, right? Like Mr. Smiley being there is a jump scare moment. So it's not like the show will never do it, but it's like it understands that is not always the correct move for the scene. That sometimes just the quiet, you think someone's holding your hand and you're like, hey, you're squeezing too hard. You roll over to tell them to stop it. There's nobody there. And you just have this quiet moment where you're looking at your hand and wondering, is 10 times more scarier than if you had like a ghost scream or a sound effect zing to really accentuate the moment.
Well, now that you mention it, the 3 jump scares in the show that I can think of off the top of my head are all nightmares. Not actually.
Yeah, no, that's true.
The dad having a nightmare that his wife is in bed with him. The one you just mentioned with Mr. Smiley, and I had a third one in my head just a second ago, but there definitely was a third one that I'm not blanking on.
I feel like I had it in my head too, and now it's gone.
So it goes.
Well, I guess the Nelly part at the end, that's not even really jump scary, right? Because
the Nelly part, yeah,
she's there suddenly in front of her, but like
for me,
the scariness of it is the slow roll of her transformation into a ghost, not like the jump moment of it.
That was, I mean, again, my reaction to that was like, it's carefully not a jump scare, though it is kind of almost a jump scare. And my reaction wasn't startlement. It was, like I said, that first episode, all the hair on my neck standing up from the sheer creepiness, not the like, you know, it's going to haunt me that we can't remember this last nightmare.
We'll think of it as we go, probably.
Yeah.
So I want to talk a little bit about Theo dancing with you.
Okay, it was when the dad comes into the room when they're hearing the loud banging noises, and then his mouth goes, and it's a nightmare. Okay, go ahead.
Oh yeah, no, you're right. You're
dancing.
Right. You got there.
Yeah,
I'm proud of you. So we see Theo in one room in the house where she's it's set up to be a dance studio, it looks like, and she's just dancing uncontrollably, and this is linked back to adult Theo and her propensity to go dancing. And it's this really interesting thing, like, this is a person who, as we said, is so closed off, is so walled in, is so protective of herself, but she has this kind of one outlet of expression that is a remnant of something she really liked to do when she was a kid, which is like, because I love that scene, and we haven't talked about the actor who plays young Shirley yet, young Theo yet. We talked a lot about Kate Siegel. We haven't talked about McKenna Grace, who plays young Theo. I think she does a fantastic job at this character. Like she channels a lot of the same energy that Kate Siegel is channeling for the adult Theo, but also distinctly different because she's not yet like beaten down by the events of her life. But I love the way she's like dancing in that room, right? Like I just love like how carefree and like she doesn't care. She's doing some dance moves, but it's not like she's like trying to do anything choreographed. She's just dancing. She's just listening to the music on this TV and just dancing. And it's so great. And then we cut to older Theo doing a very similar thing, having a similar outlet. She goes to clubs late at night and she dances. This was our introduction to Theo. This is the first way we saw her, was just she goes to clubs, she dances her heart out, she picks up girls, she sleeps with them, and then she cuts them off. And I don't know, it takes a different meaning when you see it after you see the scene when she's young. To me.
Although even that scene, she has the door closed conspicuously.
Yeah.
Because I think she's probably private even about this, you know, she's just such a serious kid.
Yeah.
And I like what you said about both the adult and child performances having the same energy. It's this contained, very serious, certainly compassionate and loving, but not in a way that's like effusive ever.
Yeah.
It's through her actions, through her choice to like take care of Luke and kind of protect Luke, which again, you know, protecting children from aggressive adults is a thing that both adult and child versions of her do.
No, definitely.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, no, I love this idea that like she goes off by herself in the house, and maybe no one else in the house even knows that she's doing this because she hides it from them. Why does she hide it from them? Because she hides everything from them.
Yep.
Everything that she enjoys that makes her herself, she just instinctively hides.
Mm-hmm. I mean, like, go back again to the fact that her family's realization that she's gay happens by accident at her youngest sister's wedding.
Mm-hmm.
Like and like, it's interesting because like I bet you if you ask Theo, like, well, why didn't you just tell your family that you were gay? Because like we see their reaction is like instantly like love and acceptance, right? So there was no worry, I think, that like they would reject that.
Yeah.
I think Theo would just be like, I don't know, I didn't want to. Like, why should I tell them that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
almost doesn't occur to her. She's just
Yeah.
not. Yeah. Yeah. And like you said, it's almost the only reason it's not instantly love and acceptance, I think, is because their first reaction is just like shock, in the sense of like, how did I not already know this? Like, how
Right.
can this
Yeah.
be?
Yeah.
It would be like if you and me at our age suddenly learned that one of our siblings was gay and we didn't know it,
Yeah.
and it's just like,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
so to be fair, my younger sister came out as gay. Gosh, I don't remember when that was. I was in my 20s still, and she's 6 years younger than me, so she was an adult when she came out to us, and I was taken aback, shocked. I
Mhm.
didn't see it coming. Of course, I love and accept her. She's wonderful. She's happily married now. But like, so like I cannot entirely be in the situation where like I can't believe this her siblings didn't see it coming, because although you always do the, oh well, in retrospect, now that I know that thing, you always do that, right? But anyway, I just like, I think it is in the context of the show, I think it is meant to really help establish this idea that nobody in her family knows a damn thing about her.
Yeah.
And like, I love, speaking again of Kate Siegel, I love Theo's reaction to them finding her, which is not like it's not like, oh no, my secret. It's just kind of like, what?
Yeah.
What do you want?
Right.
It's just like, because I don't even think she is consciously thinking about the fact that she's keeping this thing a secret from people. I think she's just like, it's just her MO. It's just what she does.
Yeah.
I don't think she thinks about it that way.
I think you're right. I mean, for some reason, I think about the fact like she gets the money, the blood money, importantly blood money from Steve, and they're like, "Well, what are you going to do with it?" Like they have no idea, and she's like, "I'm going to get my fucking PhD." And I feel like it's not like we get a lot of time to see their reaction, but I feel like their reaction is like, "What? She wants to get a PhD." I mean, again, I'm probably projecting this to some degree, but I felt like in the scene they know so little about her that it would have been a total surprise to them to learn that she wanted to get a PhD in child psychology.
Yeah. I think so too.
And she likes it that way. Yeah.
Although we see later that Shirley now knows that she's very good at that. She's very good with them. Which, by the way, not to circle back around to ragging on Shirley, but that scene was so fascinating to me. Because so the construction of the scene, to remind people, is Theo comes home for lunch every day, which is this is actually this really interesting thing about Theo that we haven't talked about yet. This idea that she is a person that builds these incredible walls around her, these incredible thick walls that doesn't let everyone in, but she still wants them close by, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think that is, in my mind, the significance of the fact that Theo is choosing to live in the house behind her sister's mortuary / house is, I'm not going to live in the same room, same building as you, but I want you to be close. And I think the idea that she comes home for lunch every day is part of that. Like, she could go off and get food somewhere else. She'd go to a restaurant. She could bring her lunch, but she likes driving home and she likes having moments of interactions with their siblings. So it's like, I want you near me, but not too close. I don't want you to touch me. I just want you there.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, is perfectly realized. And when she does take the money from Steven, and then as she's walking out of the room, he says, "What? No hug for me?" And she's just like, "No, I don't want to fucking hug you."
Yeah.
I mean, part of that is that she's mad at him, and also probably dealing with some guilt about the fact that she's taking this money. Which I'm jumping all over the place. Sorry, but one thing I really love is the way the story structures the flashbacks to inform on what the characters are thinking in moments and what they mean. And the thing that I really loved in the transition flashback that moves to her taking the check is you move from, it's the scene where Liv gives Theo the gloves. It's that scene. And we move from their hands joining in that scene. And we cut right from that to Steve holding the check out to her, this blood money check. And it's almost as if to say, you're like, it's your mom, like it's his mom, it's their mom. Like what we understand the book is that the book paints Liv in very, very bad light. It is very, very dismissive and cruel to their mother. A thing that Steve has completely dismissed as, oh, she was just crazy. And that's all there is to it. And so we see this beautiful scene of acceptance and love between a daughter and her mother that both have this special power they don't fully understand, and this fingers joining, although obviously with the gloves in between, and we cut directly from that to her accepting the blood money. And I think that's definitely trying to communicate something there on how Theo feels about this, what Theo thinks the money is, the money represents in her mind.
I love that. Yeah.
But we're so nested so deep that I forgot what the original thing we were talking about there was.
So have I, but I'll just ping off of something you said. The no hug for me thing I thought was, but perhaps this is me getting a little paranoid, but I did think for a second, like maybe she really finds something upsetting about Steve, like because when she touches someone, she kind of becomes aware of them in their past. And I mean, we don't really know exactly because she doesn't talk about it, but she becomes aware of things. And maybe there's something about Steve where she really doesn't want to touch Steve specifically. Like she would feel something or see something that she doesn't want to be reminded of or doesn't want to see.
Yeah.
It could just be like, she just doesn't want to hug anyone. Right.
Yeah.
But I felt like the show drew attention to it by having him kind of demand it. And then when she walks up to him, I feel like Kate Siegel is doing her best, like person trying really hard to hide how unpleasant this is for them face. Yeah. And it's not that I don't think it's that like, oh, she hates Steve and the unpleasant part is having to hug the brother that she hates. I think it's like there's something about this where she's like, I don't want to touch,
Yeah.
And we don't know what that would be though, really specifically.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting, like the walls that she's built up are for everyone, right? For everyone, but I think they are especially thick when it comes to her siblings. I think that's just true. So, I mean, yeah, one thing to note in that scene is that she does give Lee a hug. Like she gives Lee a hug and then turns to leave, and then that's when Steve goes, "What? No hug for me?" So yeah, I mean, I haven't actually been paying attention to this, and maybe we should make special effort to track this, but like outside of her touching the corpse of Nellie, have we seen adult Theo make skin-to-skin contact with any of her siblings?
I think that's a great point.
I don't know if that's the case.
Because, and this connects to another big point I wanted to hit, which is, this episode kind of ends on an up note, actually, for a change.
Yes. Thank you for bringing this up. Yeah.
Because she does reach out to the woman from the first episode.
Yep. I bet you didn't think she was coming back.
I really did not. I was just like, okay, yeah, this is just characterization for Theo, but no, she comes back. Theo, reaches out to her after seeing her at the club and ignoring her, and she comes over, and Theo, for the first time, like emotionally reaches out to someone. She's already physically reached out to this woman. The important thing is that she's emotionally reaching out to this woman. She's sharing the pain that she's going through with her work. Interestingly, doesn't share, I just found out my sister was dead, shares the thing that happened to her that day with the horrible molestation case.
Yeah.
I don't know if I have a point in mentioning that other than like she's not being 100% open, but she is being open, which is great.
Yeah, she's taken a few bricks off of the wall, I think. Yeah. I think we can say. And the episode ends on her saying, "Touch me," in contrast to young Theo screaming, "Don't touch me," which is like the moment of her wall building.
Yeah.
It is there to bring contrast. And yeah, I think you're right. Like it's a really interesting choice because like one thing we have to ask ourselves is this a show in which we're going to see the Crane children get over their shit and move on or not? Like, is the show going to end on the Crane children being like having worked through their trauma, or at least allowed themselves to experience their trauma in a way that could potentially lead to future healing, or not? And so far, with Steve's episode, with Shirley's episode, we haven't gotten a lot of hope in that regard.
Yeah.
I don't think we leave Shirley at the end of her episode going, I think Shirley's going to find her way through this. But I do think that is the feeling we are meant to leave the Theo episode with. I do think we are meant like that. Maybe it's something to do with this girl specifically. Maybe it's something to do with the death of her sister and how that's re-clarifying things in her mind. But Theo is allowing herself to be touched both physically and emotionally by another person, which is a pretty big deal, and an optimistic, hopeful deal for her.
I we don't. She doesn't share her deep thoughts a lot, but there's a suggestion that Nellie's suicide is working on her, causing to reevaluate like the path that she's on, the path that all of these Crane children are on, and thinking like, is that where I'm going to end up? Right. I think that's, her mom and now her sister, and she has her demons, she puts a really brave face on it. That's like one of the admirable things about the character, is that she manages to be literally heroic and save people while struggling with her own deep troubles.
One thing I found so impressive about the character is, we talked about the moment in the basement. She has that moment on the couch, which is horrifying to watch. Again, just Kate Siegel nailing it. I love Kate Siegel's, like, she touches the back of the couch and then she wants to scream, and so she takes her hand off to cover her mouth, but like she needs to keep contact with the couch to keep experiencing what's happening, so like she has to put it back. I love that little moment of where she really, really wants to cover her mouth to silence her scream, but ultimately doesn't. Like, great acting there. But we go that horrible scene where she's experiencing molestation or the emotional residue of molestation, and then she walks up the stairs and she confronts the guy, and it's like brick walls back up, baby. Like, she's like stone cold, like Theo, just looking him right in the eye, has totally collected herself. And like, there's a part of you that respects the hell out of that, and there's a part of you that's like, oh, you just experienced emotionally like one of the most horrible things a person can do to another person, and you're able to get your shit together in 30 seconds.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's sad, actually, too.
Yeah. It just tells you how much practice she has with both experiencing that kind of thing and then moving on.
Yeah. And so that's one of another of the areas that I wanted to talk about, the way that the show chooses to put flashbacks in certain places and what those mean. Like, obviously, the one thing we're doing in the Theo flashbacks is we are telling a story through the flashbacks. It is advancing forward in time from the beginning of the flashbacks to the end of them. But I thought that it was a really interesting choice. The flashback that we see where she sees her dead mother, she touches her mother's hand and sees what looked like, I don't know, what was your interpretation of that makeup gore effect on her mom?
It looked to me like her head was crushed on one side, and sort of a like jumping, falling death, which I don't think we've ever been told exactly how she killed herself. So
no, we haven't. No,
that immediately made me think that it was that she jumped. So
sure. Okay. Well, so the scene where we get to see that occurs in the future timeline or the present timeline, while she is sitting parked in front of the guy's house waiting for the police to come to collect him. So she's like watching. She's just realized this man is a monster, and the police are coming and waiting for the police to come take him away. And that is the scene in which she has this flashback to her mom. And I think that's really interesting. And I don't even know what to particularly say about what that says about anything, but I do think it is, I don't want to call Liv a monster, but she sees her mom in a way when she touches her that is horrifying and maybe a little monstrous, right? Like, just the idea that she looks scary and like, and maybe what the show is trying to imply here is she just learned this man that she's about to have arrested is a monster. Maybe when she touched her mom, she learned a little bit something about her. I mean, she sees her death, essentially, but maybe she learned a little about something about the events that led to her death, the events that led to her suicide. And that's why we're slotting this there, that this was a reveal about her mother that she didn't fully understand in the middle of her dealing with this other monster. I don't know.
Yeah, or maybe what her mother was going through, or even it could be the thing that was preying on her mother, or because that's true. Another thing that jumps out to me about that moment, and I could be missing something, obviously, but I feel like that's the only time we've ever actually done the, smash cut to what is Theo actually seeing?
It is, yes. Yep.
Every other time you just see her reaction, usually a very muted, when she's a child, it's very often like a kind of darkening of her expression as she just realizes like, oh, this is terribly sad. And then when she's an adult, she's better at processing it, but she's still just like, okay, feeling something and then moving on. That time it's intrusive, it's abrupt, it's horrifying. She screams, she backpedals, and it's not. Again, I feel like, again, the show doesn't tell us these things. Theo doesn't tell us these things. I feel like usually what she gets is sort of the like residue of the past, of like what happened here.
Yeah,
what is the echo that seeing her mother as a gory corpse has nothing to do with that. It's totally different. It's just a horrifying vision that's meant to frighten her.
Yeah, and I don't even get the feel that like when she touches stuff, she normally even like sees things in the way we think of seeing. Like to me, it always felt like she's feeling emotional residue. Like she touches the piece of Luke's pajamas down in the basement, and the thing she says is, "You were so scared." Like she feels his fear. She feels what he's feeling and maybe where it's coming from, and feels things and remembers things maybe. But yeah, this seems to be a certain instance where it is visualizing itself in a way that we've not necessarily been led to believe is the way the power works. Which maybe says something specific to Olivia. Maybe their gifts intertwining in a way. I don't know. We don't really know what to do with that, but I do think it stands out as unique from every other experience that she's had with her power throughout the episode.
Yeah, the wine bottle one is interesting because I feel like that's the story creating a, I don't know, data point for us where she doesn't actually say what she feels or how she knows this, but she just somehow knows that this is special, Yeah. She may not even know that it's a wine bottle. She just knows like someone cared about this. I could feel that they cared about it, and so we should open it. Something like that.
Yeah,
I like that.
Yeah, really interesting stuff. I think that one thing I did want to talk to you about is Olivia Crane, because it's really interesting to me. Like she is this incredibly important character to everyone that we've seen so far and will continue to see. Like it is Liv's death that last night in the house that defines all of these characters' lives going forward. And yet, like, how much do we know about Olivia Crane? I think is the really interesting thing. Like, again, the show, we talked about this at the very beginning of the episode. The show is being very kind of deliberate and intentional in the things that it's allowing us to learn about the characters that are not the focal point and not. And Liv, we see in brief moments, in brief pieces, like we see her interaction with her son and Mrs. Dudley in the first episode. We see her interaction with her daughter in the second episode. And then we see her interaction with Theo in this episode, which I think is it's really interesting to me that Shirley is the one that is most like protective of her mother's image and idea. But like, it seems like out of all the children so far, because of her gift, it seems like Theo was closest with her mom. And yet we don't, because Theo was so guarded, we don't actually know how Theo like feels about what her mom did, other than we get a little snippets of like, she's pissed off at Nell for doing something similar. But we just get very little on how adult Theo actually feels about her mother. Like we got very clear images from adult Steve and adult Shirley about how they feel about their mother 30 years into the future or whatever it is. How does Theo feel about Olivia? And what do we know about Olivia? I think these are all really interesting questions.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we don't know what Theo feels about much because she's so closed down mostly, or contained is the word that I really like to use, because it's not that she's emotionally shut down, it's that she's just contained. She feels things, she just keeps them right here where she likes them. As for, what do we know about Olivia? I think so what I was thinking as you were talking is like, do we ever quite know our parents? Like in some ways, I think I think I feel very much two ways about this, because in some ways I feel like a child knows their parent better than anyone can ever possibly know them, because a child is like dialed in
Sure.
from literally the moment of birth to pick up on cues, to read that parent's mind and be able to wrap them around their finger and get what they want from them. And I think that I'm simply right about that. On the other hand, the parent-child relationship is highly unique, and the parent is not. The parent is very often, and I think correctly, hiding parts of themselves from the child
Yeah.
to be the parent, to be the parent role. The necessity of that, and I think a lot of what we see from Liv is basically her acting the parent role, which isn't to say that's not who she is, because I think, you know, when I'm acting the father role, I'm not faking anything. That's just a certain part of myself that I'm expressing. But like, that's typically what we see of Liv, with the exception of like maybe literally one scene where she's in the bedroom with her husband.
Yeah.
And they're kind of having an argument.
Yeah, two scenes in the director's cut version, because we do get the one in the director's cut in episode 1. But yeah, no, you're right. I love that, because actually, like, one of the things that I think is true about your parents is you really don't start knowing them and understanding them as people and not your parents until you are an adult having an adult relationship with them. And that, of course, is something that none of the Crane children will ever get with their mother, because she died. So they've like the ability for them to see her as a human being, and not just their god, essentially, was taken away from them via her death. So I think you're right. And I think it is interesting how the show allows that to be. Like, I really loved the scene in the first episode where we got to see the extended scene where we got to see her and Hugh have that interaction in the bed. But maybe it is ultimately better for what the show is, for firmly putting you into the point of view of the kids, and to see her only as Liv the mom at this point in the story.
Yeah, I think, I guess broader or higher level, like I think that's something we're toying with. We're playing with this idea that as curious as we are about Nell is sort of the center of things in one way, but in maybe a deeper way, Liv is the center of things, because, you know, what was she going through? How, to what degree is she just purely a victim of this house, as in the house like possessed her and threw her off of the I'm going to just run with the assumption that she jumped to her death. Like, did she even actually kill herself, or did the house just kill her? And then kind of same question about Nell, actually. I think these are things that we're meant to ask. And again, kind of connecting to this idea of what happens to Nell at the end of the book, where we do see that she simultaneously seems totally in control of her faculties as she's driving toward the tree, and then at the last minute is like, what am I doing? And it's almost like the house has released her at that moment, and she has a moment of lucidity. But then again, we don't know that. That's an interpretation. So I think the show is also asking us to ask these questions.
Yeah, no, for sure. I'm glad you brought that up, because I mean, like, we've been taking the show at its word when it says Olivia's death was a suicide, Nell's death was a suicide, but we also know that there's a world in which ghosts exist. And like, it is especially interesting when we are introduced to the concept that both Olivia and Nell maybe have a little bit of the touch. I'm using that in the Stephen King vernacular, not their power works through touching like Theo's does, but they have a little bit of some extrasensory thing that if you're an evil monster hell house, maybe that is exactly the thing you want to pick up on, just as in Shirley Jackson's novel, in which both Theo and Eleanor, but especially Eleanor, seemed more susceptible to the house than other people would have been, or ultimately were. So yeah, lots to think about.
Yep. It's I guess I'm just stating the obvious, perhaps, but like, in that book, they were literally invited to the house because Dr. Montague picked them out for being apparently psychically sensitive in some way from stories, from their backstories. In this movie, it's not that they were picked to be drawn to the house, but it is that they're all children of Liv, and Liv is the one who is kind of the linchpin here. And yeah, I don't know. I'm just seeing if there's any more sort of connections like that we can draw.
Yeah. Well, let's definitely pay attention to that. I did want to briefly talk about little Luke, who I just want, like, this actor who plays young Luke continues to be the most adorable little child. His name is Julian Hilliard, and he continues to be the most adorable little child ever. But I think the thing we get here, Matt, is we see, I think in the second episode, we saw that there was a relationship between Shirley and Nell that existed in the story. I think we're seeing here a relationship between Theo and Luke, right? It seems like a lot of the interactions between the kids in this episode is targeted specifically at Theo helping Luke, being with Luke, talking with Luke, allowing Luke to get sent down into the basement in a dumbwaiter. Which, hey, kids, if you're listening, I don't care if the dumbwaiter says it supports 200 pounds. Don't put your little brother in a dumbwaiter in an old house. Don't do it.
I definitely would have.
Poor Daniel. But the reason I bring this up, though, is because we see that it does seem to be an incredibly close relationship between those two siblings in particular. And one thing we know about the future is Theo has put up her wall around Luke, especially, right? Like, the one thing she's talking about in the episode with Shirley is, like, you need to learn your boundaries. You need to learn your boundaries. You don't have to help Luke. You don't have to save Luke. And it makes me so sad that relationship is damaged. And part of the reason perhaps that relationship is damaged is because Theo thought Luke should be there at the wedding. And the reason why he wasn't was not his choice, but because Shirley refused to let him into the wedding. He was high. Let's not, like, again, I don't want to be too hard on Shirley, but she did make that decision and then failed to tell any of her siblings about that decision ever. So it makes me sad. I think that is one thing that I think is very true and a little heartbreaking. In the scenes in Hill House, all of the children seem very close. We constantly see kids interacting with each other. They're always doing stuff together, always exploring together, playing together. And we just know in the future that that's gone, right? That's totally gone.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's one of our, like, I don't want to go so far as to say promise, but like the story structure, promise, progress, and payoff are the 3 Ps. And one of the I'll say it this way: one of the things that you want to see is you want to see a mending, a healing. You want to see the reunification of the Crane family around this new trauma. Where I mean, I'm going to really stretch this here, but Nellie killing herself is kind of like Pennywise coming back. It's like, oh, we had to deal with this when we were kids, this horrible thing that happened. We survived it, but it's not over. It's back, and it has taken someone else. And now are we going to rise up and stand and be true and face it this time? Or is it going to steal our souls in the deadlights?
Thank you for agreeing with like 800 commenters we got on the last episode that says, isn't the show kind of structurally like it?
It is structurally like it, but okay. So, I mean, a lot of stories do this. I was talking about this with you earlier. Like, who is the progenitor of the structural conceit of like, we're really telling a story about a thing that's happening now, but we're going to help you understand why the character is behaving that way by weaving it in with flashbacks of what happened before.
Yeah.
And it's all gonna feel so goddamn satisfying. There's got to be like a first time that somebody did that in literature, and I'd love to know what that was.
It was probably Stephen King, I think. Nobody wrote any stories before he did, right?
As far as I know.
No, I mean, I'm sure there was a time in which that technique was invented and mastered, and yeah, this is a long part of the long history of that technique. There's a part of me that wonders if, when like forming the structure of this show and what he wanted to do, like Flanagan was consciously channeling the it comparison that we're making here, or if it was just like so ingrained in his subconscious he wasn't even like aware that he was doing that. There's part of me that wonders that. I mean, probably consciously, right? You're like so aware of what you're doing when you're trying to craft a story together.
I would bet money that it was, on some level, like it's such a good story. I want to merge that with Haunting of Hill House, I wouldn't even mind if that were like, the pitch, right? Like it's because it is an incredibly compelling frame for telling a story.
Yeah.
One
of the other things I did want to talk about is the little snippets we get with Luke and Nellie that I just love so much. So like those are our two remaining Crane children to focus on, right? We haven't done that yet. We can make the assumption that those are coming in the next couple episodes. But we do get to see little snippets of them in this episode of like their adorableness together. And like, I love that scene they're having through the phone thing between the two rooms about like, you have to say your name. And he goes, Luke Crane. He goes, well, if you're really Luke, let me know what your favorite type of pudding is. And he goes, rice pudding. She's like, no, you like vanilla chocolate. And he goes, no, now it's rice pudding. And she says, Luke, you have to tell me these things. I'm telling you right now. And it's just this like little adorable conversation that's happening in the background that I think is doing work to help establish like what the Luke and Nellie relationship is going to matter as we move into these next two episodes. And I love that we're like establishing this now.
That's
really great
because it's not just that Nellie wanted Luke to be at her wedding because she wanted all of her siblings to be at her wedding. It's that she wanted Luke specifically to be at her wedding, and I feel like the moment when we see her and Luke at the rehab center and she gives Luke a big hug and she kind of looks up at him in this way that is like I don't know, she's like the my big brother who can do no wrong type of like open loving expression when she looks at Luke. Even though they're dropping him off at a rehab center, she does not diminish her adoration for him at all.
I actually think I said in last week's episode that they were twins, and I'm not confident anymore that is something that the show has actually said.
Okay.
Do you remember if the show has actually said that out loud?
I don't remember it telling us that. Okay. It would kind of make sense just because I kept going back and forth in my head over like I would start to say that Nellie was younger than Luke and then be like, wait, she doesn't seem obviously younger than Luke. And also they're in the same bedroom together, which just kind of to me is shorthand for like they're the same age. So the title of episode 4 is The Twin Thing. So
the show will make this very, very definitively clear for us that they are twins. But I think it is interesting that like I said that as matter of factly last week and then was like, did I just oopsies there? And this was supposed to be a reveal. Ultimately, I don't think it matters.
Yeah, but, I'm not. I feel like it's the kind of thing I could have put together just based on the fact that children are typically not closer than like a year in age, and they seem to be basically the same age. So
yeah, and then them being in the same bedroom too, I think is when they're very close. And I think this relationship's going to matter. So I loved those back conversations. I mean, again, it's helped that these two child actors are just adorable and wonderful, and I don't want anything bad to happen to them ever. And fortunately, it won't. So we're great.
Yeah, as we know. Yeah.
So other things. I think are we at the section of just other things we liked moment now, or did you have other things you wanted to talk about?
No, I think we're at the just like list things that you liked part of the episode.
Okay. Speaking of details, I really liked. At the very beginning of the episode, when the little girl is telling Theo the story of Mr. Smiley, and when he comes, she specifically says, and when he hits the third step on the third step from the top on the stairs, it creaks, and that's how I know he's coming. And when Theo is walking down into the basement at the house, she hits the third step on the stairs, and there's a very distinct creaking noise. I love this, and I think we could just call this a Flanaganism now, because like it's a detail that the show does not stop on and draw your attention to in any way. Like, there could have been a moment in that scene where Theo hits the third step, it creaks, and then she has this moment of realization, and like we remind the audience about what the little girl said at the beginning of the episode. But that doesn't happen. She just hits the third step, it creaks, and we keep going.
Mhm.
It is just like a little pay attention to detail moment in the episode that would not hurt or destroy your understanding of the scene. Like, you get everything you need from what is just contextually in the scene, but it's just a little moment of attention to detail that I think is really great and speaks to the craft of everyone involved in this thing.
Yeah, totally. I mean, and honestly, I didn't even notice that, but that's great. I think even if you don't notice these things, they work on you still.
Yeah. What about you? Any random things you liked? We'll go back and forth.
I think I managed to weave all of my like moments of delight into the conversation. So
well, so you're like good at your job, unlike me that just saves it for the end to talk about.
You just had so many that it was impossible to fit them all in.
I do really like Steve's, like we do briefly talked about Steve's compromise with them and to give them 8% of the royalties each, which is like, it's a really interesting number.
Yeah.
Because like, so he's going to give each of the four of them 8% each, which is 32% of his royalties, right? So he's still like, I'm going to give myself 68% of this thing.
Yeah.
Even though they are not his stories, right? Like, they're like, that is one thing Theo makes very clear, is like, really interested in what you wrote about the last night, considering you were asleep for 99% of it. That like, it's just an interesting, like, and as we can see, it's a lot of money, right? Like, he writes a check to Theo for $15,000, and that is, I think we can assume, like, the royalties deal that they were accepting was like into perpetuity, right? Like, it's like, all the royalties I get from this book for the rest of its existence, you will get 8% of that. And so presumably she's getting multiple checks from him over time.
Yeah. I agree that the 8% is funny. It's the kind of detail that you include just to emphasize that Steve did not cut it evenly into 5. He is like, come on, guys, I wrote the book. Yeah, which you can see from the other siblings' perspective, like, this guy, like, he's going to try to buy us off, and he's not even going to give us an even cut.
Yeah,
it's just funny.
Yeah. You can definitely tell Steve like went home and like crunched the numbers and saw like, what is the maximum amount I can give away while still feeling like this is mine and I get to be comfortable.
Yeah,
and that's what he did. Although only Theo took it, right? Like, I love that scene. We didn't really talk about that scene very much, but I really love that scene because like, you can kind of see that Shirley is just like taking command of the whole situation, right? Like, Nellie is kind of just like in shock and doesn't know what to do. Theo is kind of like indifferent, but you can also tell Theo's like immediately like, yeah, I want that money.
Yeah.
I want that money. She can't say, but like, you see Shirley's just like, we're not taking it, right? None of us are taking it. And then like, everyone else kind of falls in line behind her. And of course we see that is not entirely true, that Theo went behind her back to take it. A fact that I'm sure her sister would not be happy to hear about.
And I'm gonna go ahead and just like make a prediction. Like, I see no reason. Wait. Okay, is this after Luke has already been in rehab? No. Yes, it is.
Yes,
Okay, never mind. Yep. I was gonna say there's no way Luke would turn down free money, but I
wonder if he would. I mean, Luke isn't there, right?
Yeah.
So I wonder if he would even give it to, maybe Luke is in rehab at that point, but he's not there in that conversation.
I wouldn't even be mad at Steve if it was just like, obviously I'm not offering this to Luke.
Yeah.
At least not right now, right? Yeah. So okay, that makes sense to me. I was gonna say what I was gonna say is I bet that Luke also took it, but didn't tell anyone. But now I'm realizing the timeline doesn't work out there.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't think Steve would. Do you think Steve paid back Shirley for his share of the rehab when he couldn't afford it?
No. No. Here's what happened.
Well, I don't think Shirley would have taken it, right? Because
Yeah.
she would have known it would have been that money, right?
Yeah, but like I'm 100% sure that he is pretending that he doesn't remember that.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. Man, so the other part I love about that scene, by the way, is where Theo says like both Steven and Shirley are doing their best James Randi impression, which is a very specific reference that I don't know if you got if you don't know who that guy is.
I do. I mean, it's the debunker of the supernatural.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is, pretending that nothing supernatural happened at the house. Yeah.
Yeah. He's from, I think I saw his movie The Honest Liar, but yeah, he was like very, very well known as just like any kind of supernatural thing. He challenges it. Isn't he the one that was like, I will give you $1 million if you can prove that something supernatural exists?
Yeah. Anything supernatural at all. Yeah. And he's actually a really fascinating character because he was a magician, like a stage magician. Mm-hmm. And he was just really like deeply morally offended by the idea that people were tricking innocent people into thinking that this was real.
Yeah.
And he's like, look, it's fun. It's entertainment, but it's by trying to make people think this is real, you're exploiting them and manipulating them and lying to them. And he would get so angry and he would expose these charlatans who were trying to pass off their magic as being real. And
there's one guy that would like make paper pages turn, and he was just blowing on them.
Yeah.
And Randy just said, what if I put down all these little pieces of paper around the book? Can you do it now? Oh no, you can't? Wow.
Yeah, it disrupted the energy. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean like I love this guy obviously because I do not believe in this kind of stuff, and I do believe that like the people doing this are charlatans and frauds and should be exposed for the manipulating of people they're doing. I like the reference. I was like, ears perked up when I heard James Randi dropped in the episode.
Yeah, no, honestly, it took me a second. I was like, wait, I know that, and then I remembered exactly who that is. Yeah, I love that. I love that guy.
The other part I really liked, we didn't talk much about. I guess we a little bit about the sequence where where Theo goes into the morgue and to touch Nell. I loved the way that entire sequence was shot. By the way, like we do this thing that we talked about in the Shirley episode, where the camera will do this thing where it'll like start to follow the character into the morgue, but then it'll like stop and like pull out, and it uses the door of the morgue as like is it a morgue? I'm calling it a morgue. I don't even know if it's actually a morgue, but whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know if that's the right word or not, honestly.
The camera will like stop and pull out of the room, like it'll walk out of the room and allow the door to frame the shot, and also allows us to feel like, oh, we're not supposed to be in there. We're not supposed to, like, this is for them. It's not for us. It does that again in this scene that I really like. I also really love the moment where Theo looks at Nell's body and says, Jesus wept. Mm-hmm. I don't know if people I just wanted to talk about that because I don't know if people understand the reference. I mean, it's the Bible is the reference, right? She's quoting the Bible. I don't know if you've heard of it. But it is the story. I think it's in Luke. I don't have my Bible memorized, but it's the story where Jesus resurrects Lazarus. Lazarus has died, and Jesus has gone to see him and sees his dead body and cries, and then brings him back to life. So I'm sure that'll mean nothing here, right?
Yeah, that's not disconcerting. To be honest, I don't know that I even like parsed that she said that. I maybe my brain wasn't working correctly. But
yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Like Jesus wept. Like it's like the shortest verse in the Bible. Because it's its own thing is just Jesus wept, because like it's a very distinctive thing that like he goes this is friends of his, he's going back to see him, he's died, and he weeps for him. It's very human.
I mean it's one of those oaths, that you hear where people are like, Jesus wept,
Yeah, it's become like a saying. Yeah.
But I didn't know that it was from that. I didn't know that it was a Bible quote, and I certainly didn't know it was from the Lazarus bit.
Yeah.
So this has been Bible Study Corner with Matt and Scott.
I think the thing about this is obviously like this is just an expression, and it is very possible that like writers in a writer's room were like, okay, like what does she say when she sees Nell?
Mm-hmm.
Should she say anything? And maybe we just settled on this. But also in the world of the author as a genius and everyone's an intentional, like it feels like an intentional choice to make this specific allusion to someone who has died and the oncoming magical resurrection of said person. I'm not saying Nell's going to come back to life, but we know Nell is a ghost that we've seen, right? So there's some connection there, I think.
Right. Well, I think we've said this on some other show at some point, or I said something along the lines of like believing in an afterlife is essentially the same thing as believing there's actually no such thing as death, because they're not dead. They're just not in their body anymore.
Sure.
Which, if there are ghosts, then that's kind of true. So,
I think that's fair. I like that. Okay, last thing I want to ask you.
Yes.
We haven't talked about the fact that there is a conversation between Theo and Shirley's husband near the very end of the episode, in which they talk about his hidden checkbook, the stuff that was set up in last episode, and we were like, I feel like we're doing something with this, but don't know what. We learned this week that the hidden checkbook is something that is worse than an affair. that Theo says you should make up an affair or something.
Yeah.
Because that will piss her off worse than the truth.
Less than the truth.
Less than the truth. Less than the truth. Yeah. But just another note from the scene we get is that he asks her, "Are you going to tell her? Because she'll be as mad at you as she is at me." So I'm just wondering what your take on this is.
Well, obviously they're stealing organs from the dead bodies and selling them on the black market, and they're splitting the profits between them.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair.
I don't really have like a good guess.
Okay. Well, then we won't touch it. We won't touch it
because it's like I look at the story and I'm like I don't see like an element that would plug into this.
Okay. I want to say something, but like even I think me saying anything is too much at this point.
Okay. I if you said something, then I wouldn't get the full credit. I would only get partial credit. And what's the point even?
It's going to be really shocking when the secret black market organ subplot is revealed.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to
holy shit, right. How did you do that?
Yeah. This is totally inconsistent with the show. It's amazing. Yeah.
So one of the other things I did want to mention is we talked about this idea of Nellie, that like Nellie was always kind of constantly ignored. And one of the things we established with Luke in this episode is this idea that Luke is never believed. And I think that's really interesting because like, I think that falls in line with Luke's eventual addiction problems where like, people just don't believe Luke when he says things anymore because he's an addict and he lies all the time.
Yeah.
And so it's a thing that was true when he was a kid where he would talk about these ghosts and no one would believe him. And it's a thing when he's an adult, and to be fair, he does lie. We see him lie about being high and things like that. But, is there going to be a moment where he's telling the truth about something that people aren't believing him?
Yeah.
Just like Nellie, was reaching out to people in the first episode and nobody was listening.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. That's interesting. I think I was going to try to go through all the characters and try to like articulate what their maladaptive coping strategy is, but I kind of just want to wait to do that until we've done all 5 of the first episodes, assuming that we're right about this structure.
Yeah, I mean, Luke's just seems to be the drugs, right?
Yeah.
but maybe that's an oversimplification of something that is probably a little bit more complicated.
Yeah, or like the surface manifestation of something like that.
Yeah. No, I think let's make sure we circle back around to that when we've checked off all of our characters.
Cool.
I did. I think that might be everything for me. I don't know.
Okay, I'm glad we made it through the list.
Let me just double check here before we do anything. No, that was. Oh, one more thing. One more thing. The fucking audacity of this Mr. Smiley guy.
Yeah.
This fucking monster molester of children to go to a therapist and be like, hey, therapist, my daughter, who I'm molesting, is acting weird. Maybe you could help figure that out. Like, so the part of me that has to believe that what's happening here is like the mother does not know what her husband is doing to these foster children, and like so she's the impetus for like, we need to get them in therapy, they need to be talking to something, and he's probably like sweating the entire time he's in these conversations. But like
he's probably like, oh, are you sure? Are you sure she really needs it? And then but then he knows that if he pushes back too hard, then that'll be suspicious. So just awful. Also, maybe even like that kind of person wants to be caught, perhaps.
Yeah, that could be.
I like sometimes I have a susceptibility to watching true crime. It's a terrible weakness of mine is true crime. and it does seem like there's a thing that happens to people where once they start doing something like really bad, they escalate well past the point where it's like you knew you were going to get caught. And I'm not sure what that is exactly. I think maybe it's a simplification, but it's like, I think maybe people want to be caught. They want to be stopped because they can't stop themselves. Something like that. I don't know.
I mean, the way he does like immediately fold under police questioning seems to lend credence to that idea. So I like that. But just like, especially when she shows up at the house and is like, hey, can I go in your basement? You know, that place that you do the molesting?
Right.
I think he's like, no.
Like that moment to me was like, I was wondering if we were going to have like an action scene where
like an actual confrontation or something. Like
he traps her in the basement and tries to kill her or something, because why else would she be going to the basement unless his daughter told her something is what would be going through his head, I think.
Ultimately, he was a coward piece of shit that wouldn't actually do anything to anyone unless they were a small child, which is terrible. But all right. I think I'm finally done with my list, Matt. I just wanted to make sure to just turn the knife a little bit more on horrible Mr. Smiley, man.
Perfect.
Really creepy design, that Mr. Smiley.
Yeah.
I love how the we see the choice to have it be like the knots in the wood with the little bit, and like the monster that she sees at the foot of her bed matches that, because like there is this idea that she says it, that like this little girl implanted this monster that she had created to deal with the stuff in my head, like she put it there, and so she is experiencing Mr. Smiley just like little girl is.
And the creature design does kind of look like it's made of wood too. So but you don't necessarily think that when you see it. It's only later that you realize that it's
Speaking, this reminds me of one more thing. Sorry, I promise this is the last thing. One thing I noticed is that and I don't know if this is intentional or not, but like we see Shirley writing by hand a lot, or not Shirley, Theo writing by hand a lot in this episode. Like whenever she's going through case files and making notes, she's not making notes on a computer, she's writing. And I bring that up just because like it's a very tactile, like it's so much more hand, like I don't know, there's just something feel to me like hand to pen to paper just feels so much more tactile and like related to touch than like just punching away at a keyboard.
I like that a lot. I also just like the fact that it's another excuse for her to be looking for us and the camera to be looking at her hands.
Yeah.
Like if you were watching her take notes on a computer, what the camera would be doing is it would be looking at her face, and then it would be looking at the screen to show what she's typing. Whereas this way you show her hand doing the thing, and you're showing what she's writing at the same time.
No, that's just 100% the practical reason for why they did it that way. And I've created a cool thematic reason, but yours is just
it's
the truth of the matter.
It's all in there though. Yeah.
Yeah. It's great. All right. I'm done. I'm done now for realsies this time. I promise.
Awesome. That was great.
Yeah. Great episode. Can't wait to get into more. Like we said, episode 4 is titled The Twin Thing. And I guess, it could be either of their episodes, right? It could be both of their episodes.
Yeah.
But what do you think?
I'm just kind of going to guess that it's simply Luke's episode, and then we have an Ellie episode after that. Although I will say we're leaving the father out of all of this.
Yeah, we are.
Who has been a pretty minor, relative to the other characters, minor, but maybe he'll have a turn in this rotation at some point.
Yeah, I mean, Hugh Crane has been a non-entity in the show other than the establishing moments. Like we haven't even seen Timothy Hutton in 2 episodes, I think.
Yeah.
So we haven't seen present day Hugh Crane at all. We get very little of past Hugh Crane, just bits and pieces. The contacts bothering me less, actually. Just wanted to report that here. Not bothered as much by the contacts after 3 episodes.
Yeah, I don't even see them, so.
All right. Let's get into our discussion question for this. This was the one we did on our very first episode of The Haunting of Hill House on Steven Stee's a Ghost. And what was the question, Matt?
What is your favorite example of 2 people playing the same character?
It was like a younger and an older actress playing actor playing the same character. Yeah.
So some great answers here. Busy Dad 82 said, I'm guessing this will be a popular one, but my favorite younger/older actor pairing has got to be Finn Wolfhard and Bill Hader as Rishi Tozier. They both just killed it. 10 out of 10 casting. Yeah, you knocked out the favorite, I think.
Yeah, when we came up with this question, I think the thing we said was like, it's going to be a lot of people answering it.
Yeah.
And while I do have a lot of qualms with it, Chapter 2, I think the casting is not one of them. I think they did a spectacular job of matching adult actors to those kid actors for sure.
I think we ended up, I personally think I ended up liking that movie better than I expected, considering kind of the mixed things I heard about it. So.
Yeah, I did not.
Yeah.
Next, we have Fault Medium, who says, one of the best child actor-adult actor pairings were Amy Adams and Sophia Lillis as Camille in Sharp Objects. I have no idea if the actresses spoke to each other on their approaches to the character or if it was just amazing casting, but it really feels like you were viewing the same person at different ages. They almost certainly spoke to each other about the performance, but I think that's a great pick. You never saw that show, did you?
No, I don't even know what it is.
Sharp Objects is a Gillian, is it Gillian or Gillian Flynn? Gone Girl author.
I mean,
let's say Gillian.
As far as I'm concerned, that name is pronounced Gillian, but people do strange things with names sometimes.
Yeah. So Gillian Flynn, she wrote Gone Girl. She also wrote this book, Sharp Objects, that was made into an HBO miniseries.
Okay, cool.
I don't even remember. It was just an 8-episode short series that was very good. I enjoyed it a lot. And yeah, part of that reason I enjoyed it a lot is because Amy Adams is the lead, who is playing an adult version of a character that Sophia Lillis, I guess, is the name of the person who did the other one. But it's a good show. It's
awesome.
Kind of been forgotten. I think Lulu Wilson is in that show as well, who we know from as young Shirley.
Cool. Sounds really interesting. I do like Gillian Flynn's work. So, Duran Longbeard says, I don't have a good adult/kid contrast, but we play fast and loose with these discussion questions. So I'll go adult character and younger adult character and say Brando and De Niro as Vito Corleone in Godfather 1 and 2. Brando added such a weight to the character that made him feel like a universal force in the world, and De Niro achieved the impossible task of playing the younger version of Vito with a similar gravitas. not much else to say other than if the same character played by two different actors in two different movies both get Oscars for the role, it's got to be good, right? The Oscars are, after all, infallible, right?
Yeah.
And then Duran says that he'll UPS Horsehead to you if you disagree.
Well, then I definitely 100% agree. The Oscars always get it right. Always, always, always. And it means only movies that win Oscars are good.
Yep.
Is the actual truth of the matter.
Although in this case, I'm not going to second guess the Oscars.
No, I mean, yeah,
veto.
this is a great answer.
Yeah.
I love De Niro in Godfather 2. So great answer. Great movie.
I think the thing about me is like, I have seen so few movies of that particular era that I just don't have a lot of reference for like other characters Brando played. So for me, like, I'm always just surprised to see that Marlon Brando doesn't actually look and speak the way Vito Corleone does. And then I'm reminded that like, oh, that's a character he's playing. Right. Because he just disappears into that character so much is what I mean.
No, I agree. Yeah. All right, next we have the Man in Black 19, who says, my favorite pairing of child and adult actor portraying the same character is Harrison Ford and River Phoenix as Dr. Henry Jones Jr. Phoenix was 17 when they filmed the movie, just under the wire. I liked seeing his sense of justice at an early age that belongs in a museum, while still being okay basically looting from others as an adult. Seeing how he got the whip, the hat, and the fear of snakes was a little too on the nose, but I guess I'll give them a pass, since there was never a fourth movie.
Exactly. As a kid watching that movie, I loved all that crap with the whip and the hat and everything.
Yeah. It is a bit too on the nose and prequely, but I think you're right. As a kid, you're like, oh my God.
Yeah.
That's how we got that.
We hadn't learned to be sick of that stuff yet.
Yeah.
Apocalypse Win 7 says, the Netflix show Dark is some of the best casting I've ever seen. It's a very complex show with many characters, and the different actors play their teenage selves versus middle-aged selves, and in some cases, elderly selves. The fact that I was never confused as to who was who is a testament to both the casting, director, and the actors. I truly believe that these kids would grow up to look more or less like their older actors, and all of them did an amazing job of echoing their counterparts' mannerisms and facial quirks. Cool.
Yeah, I sadly have not. That is one of the big holes in my TV viewing. That like I know that show caught fire with a lot of people, and I just never watched it. One day.
Yeah, it's on my list. I've heard really good things.
Yeah,
cool. All right. So, and then for the rest of the answers, I'm just going to go quickly through and read people's username and briefly the answer they gave. Or I guess we can alternate that if you want.
Sure.
Hans Baka R23PO. Says Danny McBride and J. Gavin Wild as Jesse Gemstone in The Righteous Gemstones.
Aqua Longfish says James McAvoy and Patrick Stewart as Professor X in X-Men Days of Futures Past.
Yep.
Future Past.
Brandam 3000 says Carla Gugino and Kate Siegel, not playing the same character, but noted for sorry, I'm not sure.
Familial
resemblance. Yes, sure. Yeah, they do look like they're of the same family. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Pear Jane says Kate Siegel and McKenna Grace as Theo in The Haunting of Hill House. Hey, good choice.
I know that one.
Yeah.
Michael Turn the Key, Tom Hanks and Michael Connor Humphreys as Forrest Gump in Forrest Gump. Yeah, sure. As much as you hate that movie. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay. I've calmed down about it a little bit. Okay.
Yeah.
Don't put that out there. People are going to be mad at me.
I know.
All I'm saying is Jenny got a raw deal. That's all I'm saying.
She did.
Shenanigoat says the entire cast of Yellow Jackets, multiple pairs of teen and adult actors. Yes, agree.
Baby Can You Dig Your Sam says Mayim Blalock and Bette Midler in Beaches, and then also Martin Freeman and Ian Holm as Bilbo Baggins.
E-Man 9001 says the actors portraying Randall at different ages in This Is Us. Oh, E-Man. Yes, my heart.
And finally, the Man in Black 19 also mentions Rosario Dawson and Ariana Greenblatt as Ahsoka Tano in Ahsoka. Yeah.
Really tried to watch that show. Really. Wait, maybe I did watch all of it.
I didn't watch any of it.
I feel like I watched quite a bit of it, and I remember complaining about it to you.
Yeah.
but I don't remember if I finished it or not.
And now I remember I watched the first episodes. So when I said I didn't watch any of it, I just forgot it. So anyway, yeah.
You're just a liar.
Yeah. Just a liar.
Thank you for those. Those are a lot of great episodes or great answers. I really enjoyed those. I wanted to comment on more of them, but if we're doing this quick fire thing, we can't talk about each of them, or else it's just us reading 20 questions instead of just 5.
Yeah.
But great answers. Thank you for sending those in, everyone. We do appreciate that.
Yeah. Thank you.
As for next week, Matt, what is our question for the audience for 2 weeks from now?
What's your favorite depiction of ESP in media?
Yeah, so we're not just limiting it to just like touch sense. It's any character with extrasensory perception. How is that portrayed or shown or visualized, if you want to talk about visual media, in stories that you like?
Yeah. Have fun.
Yeah, that should be fun. All right, folks, that is it. My voice is going, so we need to wrap this episode up. As we said, next week will be episode 4 of Hill House, The Twin Thing, which Matt has convinced himself is a Luke episode.
Yeah.
The fool.
Remember, you can reach us via email at flanaganswakepod@gmail.com, on Twitter at flanaganswake19, and several other places, but I'm just going to focus on the subreddit at reddit.com/r/doofmedia, because that's really where you should be spending all of your time.
Don't say that.
Other than the YouTube channel. The YouTube channel is where you should be spending all of your time, actually. Yeah.
I like that. I like that better. Also, if you want some merch, please check out doofmedia.myshopify.com for merch for Flanagan's Wake, for Kingslingers, for Doof Media in general. We've got some great Hill House stuff that's continually being made. I think Jody just added a mug, a great mug of the what looks like the Red Room door with the quote "Nellie's in the Red Room" on it. It looks really, really cool. I want one. I haven't ordered it yet, but I want one. Tons of other stuff there. Please check it out. Ghost Bear reign supreme right now, but yeah, it's all good.
Ghost Bear, very popular. Mm-hmm. Also, remember, if you enjoy Flanagan's Wake or any other show on the Doof Network, you can donate to us at patreon.com/doofmedia. You'll get access to an enormous, overwhelming backlog of our secret, private, Patreon-only podcast where we cover Stephen King adaptations, and you can catch up with us watching the TV show from live a couple episodes a month.
Yeah, I think by the time this episode comes out, our coverage of season 2, episode 1 will be out, or maybe about to come out. I don't know. I can't remember the schedule, but something about that.
Know.
Yeah. But of course, if you cannot afford to donate to us right now, that is absolutely okay. Please continue sharing the show. I know you're sharing the show because I see when the show is shared and I see other people finding it. So thank you for that. Please keep it up. And also, please keep sending in those rating and reviews. We do really appreciate them, and they really do help. This week's Spotlight review comes from Lockheed P38, who says, "Another great show. Like many others, I first discovered these guys from their Kingslingers podcast. The combination of great insight and the easy chemistry between Scott and Matt makes for the kind of show you'll want to binge. This new show builds on that while expanding the King universe to include the works of Cy Flanagan. Great theme music, too." Oh, there you go, Matt. That's your theme music.
Yay.
There's just one thing to consider. Uh-oh. It's taking a turn, Matt.
Oh, no.
Here we go. I believe it's entirely possible that these two are robots created by North Central Positronics. They somehow managed to have full-time jobs, families, and children, and are somehow able to read 12 books per week, watch 8 movies, 4 seasons of television, and create multiple podcasts. Time is slippery in Midworld, but really, I just hope they can keep it up.
All right, the jig is up, Scott.
Shit.
Burn it all.
Yeah, I mean, the real truth of the matter is just we neglect our children. No, honestly, we have a good system developed here, and the thing that I lose is just a little sleep, which I'm sure will have no lasting consequence on my life down the road. The science hasn't said anything about that. So, no, I think I appreciate that very much, but we've got a good system down, and we're doing okay. We're doing good.
Yeah. You know, there's a surprising number of hours in the day if you actually account for all of them and then schedule something in them.
Yeah. I have found that the busier I am, the more efficient I am. And I think that's just like having kids has actually made me just incredibly more efficient than I was, because you have to be.
Yeah.
You really have to be.
No, that's true. I've gotten way more done since having kids than I ever did before having kids.
Yep. But thank you so much for that review, and thank you everyone who continues to send those in, and your kind words. They mean a lot to us. We appreciate it. We're glad you're all liking the show so much. And we will continue to make it with no stopping, because we're robots.
Yep.
But you know the great thing about robots, Matt?
What?
They never die.
That's right.
Unlike poor Mr. Flanagan, who unfortunately has passed away. And that's why we're at his wake. That's the joke. There you go.
We always get there.
We'll see you next week, everyone.